Hey, thank you for tuning in. I'm Tracy Carrion, and this is Keep It Real. I'm very glad you're here to join me today. I want to talk about a question today, a question that I stumbled upon while reading. And the book that it's in is called Compassionomics, The Revolutionary Scientific Evidence That Caring Makes a Difference by Stephen Terziak and Anthony Mazzarelli. Forgive me if I say those names wrong. So the book is really about all the scientific evidence showing that compassion makes a difference in healthcare. It's really geared towards healthcare, but of course that can be extrapolated to pretty much anything, because what it's really talking about is how not just the idea that we should be compassionate and that doctors and people in healthcare should be compassionate, but that compassionate makes a difference, the outcomes and the results of our healthcare, and I would say to our results in pretty much anything, because it talks about how it impacts us as human beings, our nervous system, and all of our physiological systems when we receive compassion and when we give compassion. And that can happen anywhere. But what I want to talk about is the question that started the whole thing off. In the preface, the author talks about a question that his 12-year-old son asked him, which got him thinking and led to this. And the question is, what is the most pressing question or pressing problem of our day? And so many things might stir up for us. And I think what's really important is because that question can become overwhelming. We can think, poverty, um, hunger, um, natural disasters that are leaving people homeless and homelessness in general, and things that can feel really large and overwhelming to us in terms of needing in climate change and all these things that need to that we want to see sort of fixed in the world, and can shut us down to some extent or make us angry or you know whatever it is. But I think it's a valuable question as we look at what is the most pressing issue, problem, question of our day that we are moved by. I think that piece of it is really important too. What comes up first for you? And in your sphere of influence, what are you or can you do about that problem? So for me, if I look over the course of my life, in my professional life especially, I can find the answer. Um, I mean, I know the answer, I'm passionate about it, but at the same time, I can look at what everything I've ever done in my life, professionally at least, and what I've studied personally and been drawn to, how it spells it out. And that is the impact of stress on our lives and on our relationships and on our choices and the results that we get, how we manage that and regulate that, how we regulate our emotions, our emotional intelligence, how stress impacts us, how we show up in the world accordingly to and according to those things. And so much of the study I've done, both in school but also on my own, um, so many of the things that I speak about when I speak in the world around stress management, emotional intelligence, mindfulness, regulation, all of these things. And so now that I am also in a classroom, I've been in a college classroom now for 9 years, and I see the epidemic at play. I mean, my own son suffers from a great deal of anxiety, and I know he's not in a vacuum, that he doesn't fall all that far from the tree, and the path that I've taken in life. And so, but I see in students and in humans just how much this is impacting us in all areas and parts of our lives. And that's going to be a whole, series of talks that are, videos that I'll do with my thoughts on that. But this is about, for me, that's been one of the most pressing problems because I think all conflict starts there in how we regulate our emotion. And whatever that emotion is, I'm not discounting any emotion, but what do we do with it? How do we manage it? How do we regulate it? So that has always been very pressing to me. And so much of my chosen learning and my chosen teaching um, has been around that. And I also know, though, that when I think about it, it can become overwhelming because I see how much conflict there is in the world, how much conflict there is just in our own lives or in our country, right? Well, in this country, in America right now, and between people. And it can be like, how do I really impact that? And then it can become overwhelming. And then I can see all the work that other people are doing, and I can and it can lead to my what difference can I make? It can lead to my imposter syndrome. It can lead to the feelings of, um, do I have a big enough stage, a big enough audience, a big enough voice? Do I have enough uh, letters behind my name? All the things that then can shut down the actual work itself. And I think that again is really valuable to kind of dig into and lean into a little bit. So for yourself, what for you, as you look around your life, as you look within your own being, as you look around the world, is the pressing problem of the day, the pressing issue of the day? And then I think we have to just simply ask ourselves, how can I show up today in answer to that call? Because we're each going to have a different, well, okay, we might share those answers, some of us, but everybody isn't going to share the same answer to that. And the answer belongs to us because it lives within us in some way, or we are some place, or we are inspired by it, or it has been given to us in some way to be a part of. And so, how do we show up to that? Where can we even begin? Because it is ours. I'm I've, I think we all would love big stages where we can be heard by the whole world. And hey, that's another question actually that I used to ask. It's like, if you had 5 minutes to speak to the entire world about something that was important to you and everybody had to listen, what would you talk about? Now, don't think about your like nervousness at public speaking, um, but listen to your heart. And what would you be driven to talk about? And know that that answer is part of who you are and part of your message in the world and part of, your purpose and all. But it doesn't mean you have to have a big stage. If you do, fantastic. If you grow to one, fantastic. But our lives are our stages, um, our families, our friendships. I teach at a community college, and some people would think it's a very small stage, but I think it's a very valuable one. I get to hear and be in discussion with and speak to all kinds of people in all kinds of places in their lives and hopefully help in the facilitation of some kind of good. And so we can do that in anywhere that we are. And so we start with the question, what do we think is pressing? What do we think matters? And then we start with the question of, how can I show up to that in my own life? And there may be, well, gosh, I would go volunteer more, or I would go and do this, and I should do that, and I should do this. And please don't should all over yourselves. And I'll say that a lot. We all should on ourselves enough in life. And it's not about that, but it is about where can we find the excitement and the joy and the passion for, for working in that garden. And that may be in our own backyards. That may be in our family, with our children, with our partners, with our friends, with our animals, and with ourselves. How are we showing up internally and externally to whatever that is in the world? For me, if mine is stress and how it impacts the world, and if I truly believe that working on it is how we change the world, then I got to figure out, what am I doing about my own? How do I show up to it it's not about not having any. It's not about doing it perfect every time. but am I doing something? Am I aware of it? Is it a priority in my life? So that this calling that I have, this thing that I find of great importance in the world, I am a part of the solution and not the problem. Even in the smallest of ways, if I can show compassion to my son when he's anxious. And if I don't get it right, if I can go back and redo it and kind of repair that situation and make it better, am I at least staying mindful to that which is that I am naming as so important to me? So I leave you with that question today. What do you think is the most pressing issue, problem, question in our world today? And how can you today show up as a, um, what is the right word? I don't want to use the word soldier necessarily, but ambassador to that issue. So just think about it. Something to chew on. Have a beautiful, lovely, mindful day and keep it real. Until next time.